like this, and she.
I do remember, yeah.
Like, how am I supposed to read this? I don't know. Left to right? Line by line.
I wear silver in one eye.
To identify one
Heidi echoes that.
It is. That's good. Oh, we have to do conversation before. That's right.
I did flag that as a change.
That's what it is, yeah, it's kind of on an angle. Yeah. And it's just holds the height and that's all. It's right. That's pretty cool. Did your cousins?
Yeah. Yeah, some of the training, yeah, like Seashell paid you guys.
I am calling this meeting to order 1 minute late, just like the last one, 3:31 p.m. This regular meeting of Town of Gibsons Council, February 3rd, 2026. And we're honored to be gathered on the traditional territory of the Skokomish Nation. We need to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Lumley. All those in favor? Motion carries. And we do have minutes to adopt from January 20th, 2026. So I need a motion there. Councillor Kroll, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Anything on the minutes? All those in favor? That motion carries. And our first main item of business here is the item 4.1, Aquifer Protection Bylaw, number 1338. I'll look to our staff table to introduce this.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is the Aquifer Protection Bylaw that we have been discussing through committee over the last year or so, which has been designed to fit with the new development permit area language in the updated OCP. I believe the last conversation we had with committee was to refer the bylaw for legal review after receiving a technical review. So that process took place from September to December. We had technical review from a senior geotechnical engineer and hydrogeological engineer. And then it was reviewed for legality. And after a back and forth with one of the technical reviewers on a question that came up, we have landed with the kind of the final form of the bylaw, which is presented to council today for reading. Nothing has substantially changed within the bylaw from how it had been presented previously to committee, hence coming straight to council with it. I would just say that something was brought to staff's attention last night. There's a bit of a typographical error within the bylaw that will have to be amended before adoption. I can just call that out for everybody's benefit. On section, let's see here, it is section 5.2.1 on page 23 of 142 of the agenda, page 10 of the bylaw. It states every hydrogeological investigation report and every geotechnical investigation report submitted to the town under section 5.1.1E shall acknowledge that. If you look up to section 5.1.1, there is no E. There was a clause in there, or there was E with some language there that was flagged as being redundant from the legal review, was subsequently removed, and that reference was not caught in our finalization of the bylaw. So that should be referencing section 4. Let me just double check. 4.3.1 and 4.4.1. So those will be corrected in the final version of the bylaw before adoption. Aside from that, I will just turn it to council for discussion and any questions that you may have with the new proposed bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just start out by commenting that it's, I think we're all really pleased to see this here because it's a really monumental bylaw for the town, and it's something that, although the work's been going on this for over a year, it's something our council brought forward as I think it was like the first thing we brought forward in our strategic plan when we started to talk about our strategic planning as a new council when we started. So it's really, this is a good couple months here where we're getting a lot of our big priorities done with the so it's awesome to see this. And I want to go to councillors to ask questions, and I'll go to Councillor DeAndrade first.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, and thanks for this bylaw. Very pleased. And it's a long way. Oh my God. When I see where we were and where we are now, it's amazing. I'm just gonna, I may have asked this question before, but it has been a long time ago. And there has been some concern from some community members. And with regard to the $10 million, actually it's $15 million certificate of insurance. And just given the cost, the last aquifer breach, which I believe was 2015, and by the time they fixed in 2019, I believe it cost $10 million. And given the cost of construction and infrastructure that pretty much doubled, I'm just trying to understand what was the basis of the 10 and 5, and why not more? Just an overall understanding where this number came from.
Thank you. Through the mayor, they were seen as the highest levels of insurance that would be reasonably attainable for the type of professionals that would be overseeing this type of work. Through some of the conversation we had in preparing this bylaw with some professionals in the industry, even the $10 million general liability insurance would be challenging to have that approved through their internal processes. So there's a line where the insurance requirement pushing too high will effectively make it impossible for the work to take place. I would feel very confident that the insurance that we do have would cover 99% of any incidents that may happen, and the 1% incident that may not be covered by that amount of money, with like the example that happened within the city of Vancouver, the province stepped in. And at some point, it becomes a violation of the groundwater protection regulation, and it's a provincial issue. And I think ultimately the province covered a substantial, if not the entire amount of that bill to make good on that. And any violation that would trigger this level of insurance, the town needing to exercise the insurance that the developers would have or their engineers would have would certainly bring the province into the issue. So I think that's the extra level of protection that the town has, is the provincial regulation that's in place.
Thank you. So my other question regards this topic, is it something that this fee, I know in the past we talk a lot how long it takes for council to update the fees, considering inflation and other costs. And if I'm correct, last time we talked about updating fees every 2 or 3 years. Will this be updated in the same frequency to recover costs, or is it a more complicated process?
Through the mayor, that's a good question. That's it wouldn't be captured in the rates, fees, and charges bylaw, the regular update that we have for our fees. That's something that we could certainly look into, and we can work with MIABC as well on if I'm not sure how frequently they update their recommended insurance levels. We use that as a basis and then kind of escalated some of the requirements from there with some interaction with MIABC. That would be probably our first course of action, would be reaching out to them to get some input on how frequently they would suggest increasing rates to match just general inflation. Yeah.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, on that topic, Director of Infrastructure, you may permit a reduction in insurance. What kind of criteria would be considered in any insurance reduction consideration?
Through the mayor, so that was intentionally left unexplained just due to the possibility of a lot of scenarios where it could be viable. It's certainly something that would be reluctantly given, but if there are situations where they've done their investigation permit, they've done their geotechnical exploration, they've determined that the aquitard is, or the top of the aquifer is maybe 11 meters below grade, and they're only really working in the top 3 meters of the site, the risk is not there. So it would be kind of on a case-by-case basis but for the initial investigation, and certainly areas where we know that the aquifer is closer to surface, there would just be no consideration of reducing that until there's more data available for the specific site that could then warrant a reduction in the insurance requirements for subsequent stages.
Councillor Gandretti.
Thank you, Mayor. With regards to the level of risk, and obviously the Director of Infrastructure answered some of the question, but I was wondering if the professional report determined the level of risk, if this is determined the same way that is presented when we just look at the maintenance of infrastructure that or climate change risks, that there's a table that you can follow, if this is could be a requirement of or it is. I'm just trying to understand. And I suspect that if the project is a big project, the town would ask for a peer review, I'm assuming, because there could be a lot of impacts. But if it's a smaller project, I'm just trying to understand if the professional, because the director would rely on the professional report, if the professional report reports the level of risk.
Through the mayor, generally they'll be reluctant to say that there's no risk, but they'll say that they'll identify risks from the type of development and then propose means or methods to mitigate the risk. And then the comment would be that by implementing this, and this measure, they will effectively eliminate the risk that's present in the site. So we do certainly rely on that identification. The entire process that we have proposed is set up to identify the risk as early on in the process as possible and require them to respond to that in advancing to the next stage. So before they start doing a bunch of geotechnical drilling on the site. They need to do the hydrological investigation first to identify the depth of the aquifer so that they can design their geotechnical program to minimize the risk. So, or to avoid the risk by just, not advancing beyond a certain depth. So the process itself is inherently risk avoiding by the stages that we have proposed. We still certainly rely on the professionals of record who are on these projects for the developers to identify any risk, and we review that. And to the question of peer reviewing, we do. The language in here allows for peer reviewing. Less related to the scale of the project, more the complexity of what it is that they're proposing to do. Times where we've relied on the peer review language that was that's in the existing current water regulation bylaw, where the aquifer protection language currently sits. We've used it on sites not based on the footprint or anything, but it's just the complexity of the site conditions and how they're proposing to improve the site. If it's to a level of technical complexity that exceeds my professional ability to assess that, then that's where we rely on others. Yeah.
Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White. And thank you for all the work that's gone into this bylaw. It's been a long time coming, as Councillor D'Andretti referenced. And this is more a general comment, and I'm assuming that you would agree with me, but in reading through it, as opposed to what we were dealing with before, there seemed to be a lot more sort of procedural checks and balances in this bylaw. Like, there's no get out of jail free cards. You have to go through very clearly defined and outlined steps to get to the home plate. So, I realize that, for a risk table that would apply across the board, that's almost impossible because we know the nature of our aquifer. It's sort of like undulating, and where it may be 6 feet in one place, it's 20 feet in another. And, you can't just say one size fits all. But I'm really pleased, and I would look to you to confirm this, that we now have a bylaw with very clear checks and balances in place for everyone's benefit, that there's no surprises around the corner. Oh, you have to do this. No, it's there. You know what you have to do at the onset. So I really appreciate and applaud the due diligence that has gone into this to I'm not going to say streamline, because it's just as complicated a process as we had before, but it's much clearer. And I really appreciate that. And I think with all the effort that's been put into it with checks and balances to ensure we don't have a problem is very beneficial. So thank you for that.
Any more comments or questions? Okay, Councillor D'Andretti.
Thank you. I believe the report mentioned that monitoring reports will be submitted daily. So in case a report is not submitted, is a stop work order issued right away? And just trying to understand the process.
Thank you. Through the mayor, that's a great question. We wouldn't necessarily escalate to a stop work order right away. It would depend on, it could just be a simple oversight, or maybe they don't send it until 8 p.m., depending on the, it would depend on the level of comfort we have with the contractor, how familiar we are with them. Have they been on site? Do we have a established working relationship, or is it a contractor or driller that has never worked on the Sunshine Coast with an engineer that's never worked on the Sunshine Coast, and they're not sending communication? Our response would be different. But yeah, that's a great question. It could certainly escalate to a stop work order. That wouldn't be the first step unless there were reasons why we felt there was a level of concern that goes beyond just lack of them giving us that report. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have a motion to do 3 readings. I'm just a little confused about procedurally how we should handle the amendments. I mean, our director stated what amendments need to be made, so, I mean, should we give direction to just make those amendments at this time, or should we wait?
You may give it either first and second, or all 3 readings. If you wish to give all 3 readings, you can give it all 3 readings with the revision as mentioned to section 5.2.1.
I think that's what we should go with, rather than the language in here. That might be the easiest way to do it. And then if there does need to be more amendments when it comes to adoption later, then we can deal with it then. So Councillor Kroll's making that motion, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any further discussion? All those in favor? The motion carries. Thank you. And we have Committee of the Whole minutes for information, but I don't see any motions coming out of that Committee of the Whole, so that's just for information. And then moving on to 6.1. Our natural asset technician is here to present the low carbon resilience climate action plan.
Thank you, through the mayor. I don't have a presentation or really much to add to the staff report. I did want to highlight that within the plan itself, there is an implementation plan, which our department has been using for all of the projects that we've been doing to look at feasibility of implementing the recommended actions and associated costs and lead departments with that. So this is embedded in the plan. I recognize that it's hard to read. It's on an 8.5 by 11, and so if you wanted a paper copy, just let me know. I can print that off on something larger. But yeah, and some of the actions we're currently have started already and we're undertaking, and then we'll be looking to bring forward for 2026 and 2027 budgets. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions and hear some feedback.
I'll just quickly say that this is also outstanding to see because it's also a part of our strategic plan, and a great deal of work has gone into this, and it's especially I think the community engagement piece of it has been really valuable and impressive. And I see Councillor Kroll with a question first.
First of all, kudos to the team because it's a great report. I just had a question with respect to some of the stats in the report that indicate carbon levels that we're producing. And I don't want this to be taken in the wrong context because I'm basically living in this community because of film, but have the impact of filmmaking been included in the statistics?
Through the mayor, I believe you asked that last question and I didn't have an answer for you then either, or last time that we met on this. So it would be any of the data that we used would be, there's the community energy or community emissions inventory, which is put out by the provincial government. So I would have to look to that data to see if that's, but it would be, I would assume it would be captured within that inventory.
Okay, just in follow-up to that, the national study on film production indicates that 1 hour of series film production generates 34 tons of carbon, and the provincial, through the BC Film Commission study, indicates that 1 hour of film production actually generates 72 tons of carbon. So, and there are ways to mitigate it, which, and there's grant funding to support that. So, some time ago, I mentioned about Camelot tie-in stations, which would eliminate the need for on-site generators where they do need generators, battery generators are available. And even with our EV charging station, there's now power capacity for those to be quite readily charged. So it would be good to know that those statistics are incorporated. Also, film production companies who do carbon reports do receive a tax credit. So, there's a lot of information out there, but without the statistics, it totally skews the figures you've got. A leaf blower, which we see used quite often, kudos to the town, ours are battery powered now, but the average gas powered leaf blower puts out 11 pounds of carbon an hour. And it's pretty easy to skew figures without all the figures in the thing. So look forward to hearing about it.
Go to CAO Machado.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to add a little bit more. The way the emissions are calculated are based on the sales of fuel in the community combined. So if the folks in the movie production went up the hill and bought fuel here, that fuel counts towards our local emissions. Not so much specific to, we don't get information breaking down who's in town doing what and how much they contribute. As related to vehicles that are registered here, fuel consumption that's used. And those are the primary sources of the emissions that are associated here.
Thanks for that clarification. I'll go to staff. as
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Back to your comment, there is language in the implementation plan regarding looking at our, say, potentially the corporate procurement policies on looking at life cycle costing, but then also like GHG emissions associated with certain projects. And the Director of Infrastructure just mentioned to me about, potentially putting the reporting within like permit requirements for the film industry or for other industry as well.
Great, and I've got a few councillors, I think, with hands up. I think Councillor Lemley was the first one I saw.
Sure, I guess it's another question about the calculation. I just, it'd be interesting to see it, but I guess I would ask the mayor, does all the traffic off of the ferries that pass through town, whatever, 8 days a week, or 8 times a day, does that get removed from our municipal or our community calculation, or are we stuck with the emissions from every car that passes through? That was just one of my questions. That's a question that I have.
Are we stuck with it in the statistics, you mean?
Well, no, there's a calculation here
We're stuck
somehow.
with it
Like they've
in
calculated
reality.
what our emission level is.
Yeah.
So I don't see the calculation, but of the modeling, 65% is transportation, which is vehicles. So I'm just wondering, there's a lot of vehicles lined up running their engines stuck in town at lights and everything else passing through off the ferry. And there's thousands and thousands. What is there, 17,000 vehicles or something in the height of summer that pass through Gibsons? So yeah, there was a question. Is it in the calculation? Is it removed from the calculation? Are we somehow responsible to, combat that? Like, should we be out there, I don't know, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
is it in the calculation, I guess?
there are people in our community who would like to get rid of the ferries, so that might be another reason.
Yeah,
Go to staff on that. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I don't really have a great response. It's just that I think that potentially through the implementation plan, these are things that we could explore. Because when we worked with the Community Energy Association on developing this plan, what they did was reviewed current inventories, GHG inventories, that again was like data that the province has collected. And then through that analysis, they would look at like the business as usual projections and then set targets for the, or not set targets, but like look at targets for the town for our own community emissions. I think it would be an interesting kind of dive into the data to see where, like, what are the big drivers here beyond just like transportation 60%. So that could be something through the
Maybe
process.
Councillor Lumley's suggesting like a carbon tax or something. Never heard of that before. Yeah. What a great idea, carbon tax. Back to staff, yeah.
I think back to the CAO's comment, I think if the calculations are based on using fuel sales as a proxy for emissions, then we would be capturing the ferry traffic if they're buying fuel on the Sunshine Coast, but not their emissions themselves. We're not like measuring CO2 coming out of the back of the cars. We're using I think they used other indicators to kind of figure out what that would be. So certainly the ferry, the tourist traffic that we get and travelers that are buying fuel on the Sunshine Coast would add to that calculation. But I don't think if the idling and the slow traffic coming through town isn't necessarily all landing on us. Because it's not truly just based on emissions in terms of them capturing air quality.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Currently, the town of Gibsons is not responsible for reporting our energy and emissions. The local government climate action program dictated that any municipalities with populations of less than 10,000 were not required to report every year. And that threshold just changed for 2026, I believe. So now it's populations greater than 5,000. So we're still not within that threshold, but we will be. Well, my prediction would be that they're not going to do it by population. So it doesn't matter if we're still at 4,700. It's just that we potentially will be in the coming years that we will have to report. So that's an opportunity there for us to take a deeper look at our community emissions.
If I can add just a little bit more to that. It's not an exact science. There was Michael Wilson, who was one of our local residents here, engineer. He was part of the team that worked on that originally. So it's a rough calculation, I would say at best. What Councillor Lumley is talking about could also be addressed from an air quality perspective, and where we can idling policies or no idling policies. But we're limited, again, just unless those cars are registered here or they buy the fuel here, they're just transient emissions, and they're probably counted at whatever they bought the fuel if they were on the way here, if they're from a different place. So just to avoid double counting, essentially.
We should have a sign at the entrance, buy gas at your destination.
Expensive gas.
Oh, yeah, that's only for residents of the town. Yes. My question regards monitoring. I don't remember exactly, but obviously monitoring is part of the report. But carbon reduction goals for 2030 is just 9 years. 35. Sorry, is 9 years away. So how often these reports will come to council, in the span of 9 years?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm maybe a bit of clarification on the question. Do you mean like how often is staff going to be reporting on like our work on the plan?
No, overall achievement, right? Because we have a goal. I forgot exactly the figures now because I read so much data. But is it something that, okay, every 5 years there's a report saying we are almost there or we are not close, things like that? Because it's just 9 years away, right? So.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's a great question. And I think that would come about, like I said, when we are having to start reporting our community emissions, that's something that we would be able to track it. Because I don't think they're going to start requiring us and then change. I think that we'll continually be doing that.
Thank you, Mayor White. As I said at the beginning of this, it's a great report, and I really appreciate the fact that we're moving in a positive direction, and I'd like to move the recommendation.
Excellent. Any further discussion on this, on the motion? All those in favor of the motion? The motion carries. Thank you very much. And the next reports from the infrastructure department as well on the wastewater treatment plant expansion plan contract award.
Thank you, Mayor White. Just briefly, this is, was alluded to earlier in the day at the committee meeting. This is a contract to carry out an expansion plan, and it replaces some of the previous items that would have shown up on budget going back to 2024 that came out of the strategic plan. If you'll recall, that was finalized in January of 2024, and one of the recommendations there was to start working towards a preliminary design to expanding the treatment plant. In that time, we've completed a landslide assessment at the treatment plant, just to ensure that there's no geotechnical concerns there, which, other than some minor setbacks that we'll have to work around, no concerns there. Through that time, we've reevaluated the urgency of needing to expand through some of the work we've done in the collection system to eliminate I&I, or the infiltration, which has reduced some of the flows, and looking at some of the projected population growth that was included in the strategic plan, which was more aggressive and reflected the number of in-stream developments at the time, which have not materialized to date. So through that time, it's allowed us to rescope what this looks like. So rather than getting right into expanding the treatment plant, the scope of work that has been proposed and that we're recommending is awarded would look at all of the efficiencies that we have within our treatment process and collection system to eliminate all of the low-hanging fruit and the medium-hanging fruit before we get to the hardest to reach, which is the $60 million expansion of the treatment plant, which we're quite confident at this point is not needed, but it's a question that we can't leave up to chance to find out that we are running into capacity issues because of the complexity of the treatment process and the engineering involved. It's multiple years to get to the point where we would have something constructed and complete. Even just something as simple as replacing the centrifuge, from the time that the money was approved until it was commissioned, was about 2.5 years. This would certainly require more complex engineering, so we're recommending that we move forward with it. We don't see the urgency that was necessarily identified as part of the strategic plan, which is in part why we're so excited about working with the consultant that we've recommended that we award the contract through here. Their experience and their breadth of experience in doing this exact type of work, and their approach is going to very well align with some of the asset management principles that William outlined for you earlier today. So I'll just look to council if there's any questions on the award. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor White, and thank you for this report. And you know, people immediately look and think, oh, that's, the recommended firm is appreciably more expensive. But then when you look at the hours involved, you're getting almost 3 times the hours for the dollar value. Looking at the company's, your recommended company's website, you're correct. Their level of expertise seems bar none. And they're in so many other areas that sort of arch over other initiatives we've got on the books. So I'm sort of encouraged that they might share some insights on knowing the path we're on in trying to get ahead of our infrastructure and water, sewage, and drainage, that they might share some of their, say, oh, we're dealing with this, but oh, by the way, have you considered doing that over here? I'm assuming because of the hour involvement we're getting from them for this investment that that's the approach that will be taken. So, I'm certainly in support of the staff recommendation for dealing with the recommended firm. But their website is really impressive, so Yeah.
So should I take that as a motion?
You may take that as a motion, but I'm quite sure other people might have some
Well, it's a-
comments, questions, or concerns.
I'm going to take that as a motion. A seconder. But if anyone wants to talk about the motion, okay. All those in favor? The motion carries. And now we're on to item 7 of the agenda, which is that the meeting be closed. A motion that the meeting be closed in accordance with section 91A of the Community Charter. And that section is written out on the agenda page. Councillor Kroll moves that, and seconded by Councillor Thompson. All those in favor? The motion carries to go in camera. Thank you. Yeah.